is a piece that was composed rather recently by Georg Friedrich Haas. That is truly the most ambitious piece that I've ever had the chance to perform on my instrument. It is simultaneously transformative, heartbreaking, challenging, inspiring. It's just really incredible. And Dal Niente first had the opportunity to perform it in 2013 in Chicago, and this year we're very excited to be bringing it to Washington, D.C., to the Library of Congress.
Pieces that have like a lot of historical baggage. Personally, at least, I'm like often resistant to trying to like pin historical baggage onto the piece because I have this really like, I don't know, maybe naive notion of like the autonomy of the work of art. But I think with In Vain, you actually get a lot of mileage about knowing just at least something about the political background behind the piece, which is that Haas started it, I think, in 1999 after some electoral victories by what's it called, the Freedom Party of Austria, and this guy Georg Hader. So it's this kind of far right political party that won some electoral victories, you know, and they had far right opinions about things like employment and immigration, and so the title In Vain sort of reflects Haas's notion that, you know, and particularly problematic, of course, in German-speaking countries, this notion that the specter of fascism had been defeated, right? Because just when you thought, you know, the civilized sort of post-war sort of Austro-German cultural landscape, just when we thought that the specter of fascism has been eliminated forever, it rears its ugly head again. And so you don't have to know. I think you don't have to know a lot about specifically the Freedom Party of Austria to know this, but you do have to sort of have this sense that Haas is thinking in big historical terms, and so what the piece does is it uses the musical materials as a metaphor for the kind of cyclical way in which history has worked. So you have on the one hand so-called equal temperament, where the piece starts out with all this kind of swirling scales, and that's pitted against just intonation, the harmonic series. It's very, very kind of beautiful and pure.
Which is maybe a nod to just natural sound, right?
Sure, and the notion of political freedom, maybe the notion of a radically free humanity that's free from the evils of fascism.
I mean, listening to the music that's in just intonation in the piece, it sounds utopian to me.
Right. That's exactly that's the right word. That's the word I'm looking for. And then we have all this beautiful utopian music, and then inevitably the kind of equal temperament and the swirling returns. So there's this sort of like juxtaposition throughout the piece of these two fighting musical styles or kinds of musical materials, and the piece is not able to resolve. It keeps devolving into this kind of like you keep thinking you had this problem solved, and then it keeps coming back.
For me, it's an absolutely crushing piece because there's this incredible beauty in it.
Right.
But that beauty always has like the seeds of its own demise. Like that most beautiful music at the core of the piece, the compositional feat of like transforming that into this swirling music of kind of chaos and disorder and confusion, human confusion, that I feel like relates to my experience of reading the news on any day.
Yep.
Is really like it hits home in a way that like gives you time to both consume and think about it because of the scale of the piece being so long, and also has an incredible emotional impact because of how sonorous and lush some of the music is. Truly romantic, beautiful music.
Indeed.
Yeah, and like at the end, you're talking about the cyclical nature of it. I feel like when he brings back the opening material again, it's like the composer is not trying to impress the listener. He's not trying to impart some new idea or beauty on his audience. He is oppressing them with repetition that is not being used for some new perspective on things. It's bringing the same stuff back again. And at the end of the piece, you really feel like, despite its great beauty and how convicting it is, it's like at the very end of the piece, it feels oppressive, and you kind of want it to just stop.
It's absolutely oppressive and totally, it wears you down as a listener and as a performer. By the end of playing that last section of the piece, I really want it to be over. Like truly want it to be over. Yeah. Not in a like I'm bored with this kind of way, but in a like this is really crushing and I can barely stand it.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting idea of like how the idea of composer being successful in achieving their goals.
What's the function of that music?
Yeah. Why would you subject yourself to that experience?
For me, it's a very transformative piece in spite of being as dark as it is. I feel it to be a very dark piece, though it is full of beauty. And part of that has to do with those political dichotomies you're talking about, musical dichotomies between the different temperaments, and then also he creates another dichotomy between darkness and light in the piece. And there's always a very dynamic relationship between the two sides of the coin with all those elements to my ear, and the way that those dichotomies play against each other opens up your imagination. So like for me, for instance, the first time the lights go totally black in the piece, I felt as if I were completely lost on stage.